The bright light of the questioning room made Zoric's scales itch. His claws tapped a pattern on the metal table as the three council investigators stared at him from across the polished steel surface. "State your name and position again for the record," said the lead investigator, a stern granite face with features like weathered stone. "Zoric Thorn, Life Survey Team, Clearance Level 3, he replied, his voice cracking. How many times would they ask him this? His throat pulsed with worry. "And you were the chief science officer aboard the Starseeker?" asked the investigator. "Yes, the same ship that vanished during a routine survey of the Edge system many cycles ago." Zoric's inner eyelids flickered nervously. "Yes, we had a massive engine failure during our approach to Edge 9. The granite face investigator scrolled through a data pad, pupils shrinking to dots. "Your emergency signal activated only a few cycles ago. That's many cycles unaccounted for. We crashed. Most died on impact." Zoric's claws dug into his palms. "The others, the environment took them." The second investigator, a small clear skin with transparent skin, showing a rapidly pulsing blood system, leaned forward. "Except your crew list shows only a few personnel aboard. You claim most died in the crash and shortly after, yet your report mentions 2 survivors beside yourself making contact with." The clear skin paused, mouth parts clicking doubtfully. "A human settlement." "They were there," Zoric hissed, "on an uninhabited world. They were thriving." The third investigator, who had remained silent until now, placed a map projector on the table. A 3-dimensional image of Edge 9 appeared. A landscape of sharp mountains and toxic plains. "This planet has never been colonized. Its air contains poison compounds deadly to most carbon-based life. The Council has no record of any human expedition, settlement, or crash in this area." Zoric's laughter bubbled up suddenly, startling the investigators. "Records? You think they wanted to be found? They picked that world because you wouldn't look there." The granite face's forehead wrinkled. "Start from the beginning. Tell us exactly what happened after your ship crashed." Zoric closed his eyes, the memories washing over him like toxic rain. "We came down hard in the Northern Highlands. The crash had torn the Starseeker into several pieces across a stretch of razor-sharp volcanic glass. The first impact killed the pilot and navigation team instantly. The back section containing the medical bay and several of my colleagues disappeared into a crack during the second impact." Zoric awoke to alarms and the hiss of failing air seals. Blood, his own and others, pooled on the ceiling-turned floor of the upside-down command module. His environmental suit had automatically sealed around a metal shard sticking out from his upper shoulder, giving medicine and stopping bleeding. "Anyone alive?" He croaked into his communicator. 2 responses crackled back. Lexi, the expedition's rock specialist, and Pella, a junior life scientist. They moved through the wreckage, saving what they could. The emergency beacon was intact but damaged. Pella, with her delicate handling appendages, managed to activate it after hours of careful work. "Signal's weak," she reported, her wide eyes reflecting the beacon's sputtering light. "I can boost it using parts from our suit communicators, but even then, how long?" "How long?" Lexi asked, his stocky form hunched over a half-working data screen. "I don't know," Pella replied. "Depending on who's out there, it could be as little as a few cycles, but it could be many more." Zoric felt his heart valves tighten. "Our suits have many cycles of air processing ability. Assuming we don't move much." Lexi grimaced, showing teeth worn from a stress-grinding habit. "And that's assuming nothing on this hellscape tries to eat us before then." The crashed module provided minimal shelter from Edge 9's burning environment. Their environmental suits filtered the worst of the poison compounds, but each breath burned slightly. Outside, giant fungus-like growths swayed in toxic winds, releasing clouds of spores that settled on their shelter and began dissolving the metal. They established a routine. Pella monitored the beacon and maintained their suits. Lexi checked their dwindling supplies and studied rock formations for potential shelter. Zorik cataloged the aggressive ecosystem surrounding them, partly out of scientific duty, partly to identify threats, and mostly to occupy his mind. Several nights after the crash, as twin moons cast sickly light through the toxic fog, Zorik spotted unusual illumination on the distant horizon. "Impossible," Lexi muttered when Zorik pointed it out. "Nothing smart lies here." "Those are artificial lights," Zorik insisted, "arranged in patterns too regular for natural events." Pella magnified the image on her visor. "Could be another wreck. Perhaps someone responding to our beacon." "Response would come from orbit," Lexi countered. "Those lights are ground-based and fixed." They debated until dawn, then watched in shared shock as the lights didn't fade out with daylight, but winked out all at once, the sign of artificial lighting being turned off. The discovery changed everything. After calculating their dwindling supplies against the possible rescue window, the decision was inevitable. "We head for the lights," Zorik announced. "Many miles. If we save the remaining food and water recyclers from the wreckage, we might make it." Their journey began the following dawn. The landscape of Edge 9 proved more dangerous on foot than it had appeared from orbit. Vast fields of volcanic glass gave way to bubbling chemical lakes. Strange plants grew in patterns that defied normal life science. Some plants actively tracked their movement, tendrils reaching toward them when they passed too close. They soon discovered they weren't alone. The first encounter happened during their second night of travel. Lexi took first watch while Zorik and Pella slept in a makeshift shelter against a rock formation. Zorik awoke to frantic shouting. "Move now." He scrambled upright to see Lexi firing his emergency laser cutter into the darkness. Something massive moved beyond the beam's reach, something that seemed to absorb the light rather than reflect it. Multiple limbs scraped against stone, and a smell like burning chemicals filled the air. "Run," Lexi shouted, backing toward them while maintaining fire. "I'll hold it." The creature surged forward faster than anything that size should move. 6 limbs, each ending in hooked appendages, pulled its bulk across the ground. Its form seemed to shift between solid and semi-liquid states, with a skin like oil on water that reflected rainbow patterns in the laser's light. Pella froze in terror, her translator pendant emitting a high-pitched alarm as it tried to process the low vibrations coming from the creature. Zorik grabbed her arm, yanking her backward as Lexi placed himself between them and the advancing monster. "Get to the lights." They never learned what Lexi intended to say. The creature moved with impossible speed, engulfing him in limbs that seemed to multiply as they watched. Lexi's scream cut off abruptly, replaced by wet crunching sounds and the hiss of acid on metal and flesh. Zorik pulled the frozen Pella into a narrow crack the creature couldn't follow. They huddled there until dawn, listening to sounds of feeding that would haunt Zorik's dreams for cycles to come. When they finally emerged, only scraps of Lexi's environmental suit remained, the metal parts partially dissolved in pools of burning fluid. "Lexi, what was that?" Pella whispered, voice shaking. Zorik accessed the planet's survey data stored in his suit's computer. After comparing what they'd witnessed with preliminary orbital scans, he found a brief entry. "The native life database labels it as apex predator," he read, with a note, "unhuntable due to rapid adaptation, healing properties, and apparent avoidance behavior." "Unhuntable," Pella repeated hollowly, all the motion gone from her voice. They continued toward the lights with renewed urgency, now traveling only by day. 3 more times they spotted the creatures, always at a distance, always watching, always waiting. The third sighting revealed multiple specimens, suggesting they hunted in coordinated packs. Most shocking of all were the figures moving around the settlement's exterior, unmistakably human in form, working without environmental protection despite the toxic atmosphere. How are they breathing? Pella wondered, her scientific curiosity momentarily stronger than her fear. As they watched, one of the distant figures seemed to drag something large through the gate. Even from this distance, Zorik could see the distinctive oil-slick shimmer from an unhuntable's hide. The creature wasn't moving, but it wasn't completely dead either. Parts of it still pulsed and shifted as though fighting against its inevitable end. "They killed one," he whispered, memories of Lexi's death fresh in his mind. "Not just killed," Pella replied, adjusting her visual enhancers. "They're harvesting it." Through the enhanced view, Zorik could see humans methodically cutting the creature with tools that glowed with an energy signature his suit couldn't identify. They worked with practiced efficiency, separating specific parts and placing them in specialized containers. What disturbed him most was their casual manner, as though taking apart a nightmare predator was routine work. "We should reconsider," he said, backing away slightly. "If they can kill those things, what choice do we have?" Pella gestured at her suit's environmental readings. Filtration efficiency dropping fast. "We'll be breathing raw poison in days." She was right. Death by toxic atmosphere, or risk approaching these human predators who somehow hunted the unhuntable. Neither option appealed, but only one offered any chance of survival. They approached cautiously, still some distance from the walls when they were spotted. A guard on a makeshift watchtower signaled their approach, and several figures emerged from the gates, moving purposefully toward them. The humans wore patchwork protective gear that left significant skin exposed to the burning air. As they drew closer, Zorik noticed strange modifications, implants visible beneath the skin at temples and throats, ritual scarring forming geometric patterns on exposed flesh, and most disturbing, subtle body differences from normal humans, slightly longer limbs, enlarged eyes, and unsettling fluid movement. Survivors from the crash in the highlands. The lead human called out as they approached, surprisingly in perfect standard language. "You speak our language," Pella stated, obvious but all she could manage in her shock. The human's face twisted in what Zorik recognized as a smile, though something about it seemed wrong. Too wide, teeth slightly too sharp. "We speak many languages here, friends. I'm Rex." The human gestured to the settlement behind them. "Welcome to Haven." "Wait," interrupted the granite face investigator. "They said they'd been monitoring your beacon. The one you claimed was barely working." Zorik's scaled hands trembled slightly. Yes, they had technology that shouldn't have been possible on a frontier world, especially not one that toxic. The clear-skin investigator tapped a sequence in her datapad. Records show no registered human colonies within many light years of Edge 9. The closest human presence would be trading outposts in the star system. "They weren't registered," Zorik hissed. "They told us they were descendants of a prison transport that crashed many years ago. Prisoners and guards who survived and adapted." The third investigator, who had been silently taking notes, finally spoke. "No human prisoner transports have ever been routed through the Edge system. The radiation levels alone would violate many different sentient rights rules." Then they lied. Zorik slammed his palm on the table. But they were there, humans living and breathing toxic air like it was nothing. The granite face pushed a datapad toward him. On the screen scrolled images of known human criminal organizations. Did any of their symbols or markings resemble these? Zorik flicked through the images dismissively until a particular symbol made him freeze, a geometric pattern of interlocking hexagons surrounding a spiral. This one. It was carved above doorways throughout the settlement. The investigators exchanged glances. "Continue your account," the granite face said, voice noticeably tighter. Rex and the other humans led them into the settlement through heavy gates that sealed with a pneumatic hiss. Inside, Haven revealed itself as a strange mix of advanced technology and primitive construction. Dwellings carved into the mountainside were enhanced with salvaged ship components. Power lines, clearly handmade, snaked between buildings. Gardens grew strange twisted vegetation under artificial lighting. Most disturbing were the colonists themselves. Many humans of various ages moved throughout the settlement, all bearing the same modifications: implants, scarring, and subtle body differences. They stared at the lizard-like visitors with large eyes that reflected light like polished glass. Children played in an open area, but their games were unlike any Zorik had seen in human settlements before. Instead of the chaotic energy typical of young humans, these children moved in eerie coordination, sometimes freezing completely before continuing their play in perfect unison. Their laughter came in harmonized bursts rather than spontaneous outbursts. When one child fell and scraped its knee, the others turned simultaneously, their expressions showing identical concern. An older human approached the injured child, placing a hand on its shoulder. Instead of comforting words, they shared a long moment of silent eye contact before the child nodded and rejoined the group, its minor wound already healing in an unnatural pattern. Communal empathy, Rex explained, noticing Zorik's observation. The children are more sensitive to it. They haven't yet learned to individuate their experiences. Individuate? Pella asked, her scientific interest piqued despite her obvious discomfort. To separate personal consciousness from the group awareness, Rex said, as if this were the most natural concept in the world. It's a developmental stage, like learning to walk. First, they feel everything together, then they learn boundaries. That's not how human development works, Pella said quietly, almost to herself. Rex smiled, revealing teeth that seemed just slightly too numerous. Not traditionally, no. You must be exhausted, Rex said, leading them to a structure near the settlement center. We've prepared quarters for you. You were expecting us? Pella asked. We've been tracking your progress since the crash. Another human, a female with extensive scarring across her shaved scalp, explained. The highlands are treacherous. Few survive their first encounter with the unhuntable. Zorik noticed how she spoke the word almost reverentially. You know of those creatures? He asked. The humans exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. We know them intimately, Rex replied. They shaped our existence here. Their quarters consisted of a single room carved from the mountain rock, fitted with salvaged furniture adapted for non-human anatomy. The air inside was processed to reduce toxicity, though still uncomfortable by council standards. Rest, Rex told them. Tomorrow you will learn how we survive here. After they left, Pella immediately began scanning the room with her suit sensors. The air filtration system is handmade but incorporates technology beyond council standards, she whispered. And there's an energy field throughout the walls, far too regular to be natural. They seemed prepared for non-human visitors, Zorik noted. Too prepared. Agreed, Pella said. That night, despite exhaustion, Zorik slept fitfully, his dreams filled with shifting shadows and the sense of being watched by too many eyes. Morning brought a young female human to their door, older than the children they'd seen. I'm Mira, she introduced herself. Rex assigned me as your guide. I'm to show you how Haven functions. Mira led them through the settlement, explaining their survival mechanisms with the enthusiasm of someone who rarely got to share knowledge with outsiders. The colony derived power from heat vents beneath the mountain, grew specialized fungi for medicine and food, and had developed filtration systems that allowed them to process the planet's toxic water into something drinkable. But how do you breathe the air? Pella asked, still in her environmental suit despite the colony's reduced toxic levels. Our scans show poison compounds that should destroy human lung tissue. Mira touched the implant visible at her throat. Adaptation. The first generation suffered terribly until they developed these filtration implants. Now we're born with enhanced lung capacity and modified air sacs. Each generation breathes easier than the last. Born? Zorik questioned. How long have humans been on Edge 9? The elders arrived many cycles ago, Mira replied. I'm third generation. Their tour continued to what Mira called the outer pens, reinforced enclosures containing various native life forms. Some resembled the fungi they'd seen on their journey, but there were others with multiple limbs and hard outer skeletons. We study everything, Mira explained. Understanding is survival. At the furthest pen, Zorik froze. Inside was a young specimen of the creature that had killed Lexi, smaller but unmistakable with its 6 limbs and oil-slick hide. "You've captured an unhuntable," he whispered, instinctively backing away. Mira laughed, the sound strangely musical. "That's just what the weak call it. For us, it's breakfast." His shock must have been evident, for she continued with the same unsettling smile. "Every predator can become prey with the right understanding. The elders learned to hunt them out of necessity. Now it's our way." That evening, they were invited to dine with Rex and other colony leaders in a circular chamber deep within the mountain. The room was dominated by a large table fashioned from native stone and what appeared to be the shell of one of the creatures. The meal consisted of various fungi preparations and synthesized proteins. Zorik noted that while some dishes were clearly designed to accommodate lizard-like biology, the humans ate things that glowed with inner light and moved slightly on their plates. Rex explained more of the colony's history, how the prison transport had malfunctioned and crashed, how the survivors had adapted to Edge-9's hostile environment through necessity and creativity, developing what he called the communion to share knowledge and coordinate survival. Throughout the meal, Zorik noticed Pella growing increasingly agitated. She barely touched her food and kept glancing at the humans' synchronized movements. Later, back in their quarters, she confronted him in whispers. "There's something wrong here. While you were speaking with Rex, I slipped away and explored deeper into the mountain. There are medical facilities down there, Zorik, advanced ones. I saw tanks with things growing in them and data screens with genetic sequences I've never seen before. Perhaps necessary adaptations for survival," Zorik suggested, though doubt gnawed at him. "No," Pella hissed. "They're changing themselves systematically. And I found Council medical equipment, recent models, not decades old. They're lying about being descendants of crashed prisoners. They must be." Before Zorik could respond, a soft chime indicated someone at their door. Mira stood there, her large eyes reflecting the dim light. "Rex requests your presence, Pella," she said, her voice melodic but somehow flat. "He wishes to discuss your scientific background." Pella glanced at Zorik, fear evident in her posture. "At this hour, can it wait until morning? Science never sleeps on Edge-9." Mira replied with the same unsettling smile. "Especially when unauthorized explorations yield such interesting questions." Pella went rigid. "I don't know what you mean." "Your curiosity does you credit," Mira said, her tone unchanged. "Rex simply wishes to provide answers rather than leave you to speculation." Against Zorik's whispered objections, Pella accompanied Mira. That was the last time he saw her intact. "What do you mean intact?" the clear-skinned investigator asked, mouth parts clicking rapidly. Zorik stared at his claws. "The next morning, when I asked about Pella, Rex told me she had volunteered to join a hunting party. When I expressed disbelief, he showed me surveillance recordings of her enthusiastically agreeing to observe their techniques. You didn't believe these recordings. They were perfect, too perfect. Pella's mannerisms, her speech patterns, but her eyes were wrong. Flat, like she was reading lines." The third investigator leaned forward. "And you didn't attempt to locate her?" "What could I do? I was alone among dozens of them, with a failing environmental suit on a toxic world." Zorik's throat sac pulsed with agitation. "I played along, tried to learn more, to understand what was happening." "For how long?" the granite face asked. "Many cycles," Zorik replied quietly. "Many cycles of watching, learning, and growing more disturbed by what I discovered." Without Pella, Zorik had little choice but to integrate into colony life. His life science background made him valuable to the humans, who seemed genuinely interested in his knowledge of other species. Yet there remained an undercurrent of wrongness to all interactions. The way colonists moved in unconscious synchronization, how conversations would suddenly pause as if everyone were listening to an inaudible signal, the strange modifications that seemed more pronounced in older colonists. Mira became his primary contact. Unlike other colonists, she seemed genuinely curious about the outside galaxy, asking questions about worlds she'd never seen. During these conversations, Zorik carefully extracted information about Haven's true nature. The communion began as necessity, she explained one day while showing him their water-growing systems. The first survivors were divided, prisoners and guards still clinging to old rankings. When the unhuntable began picking them off, they needed coordination to survive. "How does it work?" Zorik asked, examining plants that twisted toward him with apparent purpose. Mira touched the implant at her temple. "The natural world is full of solutions if you're desperate enough to embrace them. The unhuntable communicate through chemical signals and neural fields. The first elders discovered this by necessity, through consumption and observation." Consumption. Zorik tried to keep his voice steady. "What better way to understand a predator than to take it into yourself?" She smiled. "Certain neural tissues, properly processed, allow for temporary linking of consciousness. The implants extend and stabilize this connection." Many days later, Zorik was invited to observe a hunt. 8 colonists, including Rex and Mira, prepared at dawn with minimal equipment. Just blades and small containers of what they called a tractor compound. They moved into the toxic wastelands surrounding Haven with purpose, following no trail Zorik could see. He struggled to keep pace in his increasingly unreliable environmental suit. After hours of travel, the hunting party stopped in a ravine lined with fungus-like growths. "Watch and remain still," Rex instructed, positioning Zorik on a rocky outcropping. "Whatever happens, do not interfere." The hunt that followed defied explanation. The humans separated, taking positions around the ravine with a precision that suggested perfect awareness of each other's locations, despite having no line of sight. One hunter released the contents of an attractor canister into the wind. A scent compound, Zorik realized. Within minutes, an unhuntable appeared, larger than the one that had killed Lexi, its 6 limbs flowing like liquid as it moved. It paused, sensing the scent, then charged toward the source with frightening speed. The humans moved with impossible coordination. As the creature focused on the scent source, others attacked from blind spots with perfect timing. Their blades struck precise points on the creature's shifting form, targeting what must have been weaknesses invisible to Zorik's perception. Most shocking was how the humans anticipated the creature's adaptations. Each time it developed a defense against their attacks, hardening its hide, growing spines, producing acid. The humans immediately adjusted their tactics as if they had foreknowledge of the changes. The creature fought fiercely, injuring 2 hunters with acid secretions and nearly decapitating Mira with a whip-like limb. Yet the humans showed no fear, their expressions almost ecstatic as they danced with death. After many minutes of combat that resembled a choreographed ritual more than a desperate struggle, they subdued the beast. Rather than killing it, they paralyzed it with precision strikes to what must have been nerve clusters, then bound its still-living form with restraints that adjusted to its shifting mass. "The communion is strongest when the offering is fresh," Rex explained, seeing Zorik's confusion. "Death diminishes the connection." That evening, Zorik was invited to witness the communion ceremony. An honor, Mira assured him, never before extended to an outsider. "Why me?" he asked as she led him deep into the mountain complex. "You've shown understanding beyond most outsiders," she replied. "And Rex believes you might be compatible." The ceremony took place in a circular chamber even deeper than their dining hall. The colonists gathered around a central altar where the still-living creature lay restrained. Implants throughout the room pulsed with soft light in time with some unheard rhythm. Rex, now dressed in ceremonial clothes that incorporated parts of creature hide, addressed the gathering. "We gather to share an understanding, to commune with that which sustains us, to incorporate its strength into our collective." What followed sickened and fascinated Zorik in equal measure. With surgical precision, Rex extracted neural tissues and fluid from specific parts of the creature's anatomy. These were processed through equipment that appeared to be modified council medical technology, reduced to a glowing compound that was distributed in small cups to all present. The outside galaxy would call us monsters, Mira whispered to Zorik as they watched. They cannot understand that survival creates transformation. When the processed neural extract reached them, Mira offered a cup to Zorik. You are free to decline, but it would answer questions you haven't even thought to ask. Zorik stared at the glowing fluid. Something in its shifting patterns reminded him of the way the unhuntable moved. Fluid yet purposeful, chaotic yet coordinated. The rational part of his mind screamed warnings about cross-species chemical incompatibility, about losing himself to whatever transformation these humans were undergoing. Yet beneath that scientific caution lurked something else, a primal curiosity that had driven thinking species to explore, discover, and evolve since the dawn of consciousness. What will it do to me physically? He asked, his voice barely audible above the soft humming that filled the chamber. Mira tilted her head, studying him with those large eyes. That depends on your biology and your mind. The first experience is temporary, a glimpse, nothing more. Some are more compatible than others. And if I'm compatible, then you'll understand why we've chosen this path. She gestured to the gathered colonists, who watched their exchange with unified interest. Look at us. We survived what should have been unsurvivable. We thrive where the council declared no life could exist. We hunt what was deemed unhuntable. Another colonist spoke, his voice blending almost seamlessly with Mira's, creating an unsettling harmony. We've moved beyond the limitations of separate consciousness. Every insight, every experience strengthens the whole. And those who aren't compatible. Zorik pressed. Mira's expression revealed nothing. They contribute in other ways. Nothing is wasted here. The implications chilled him. He thought of Pella, wondering if her disappearance had been due to incompatibility rather than her unauthorized exploration. Yet even as these fears grew, his hands reached for the cup. Against all scientific training and survival instinct, Zorik found himself accepting it. His justification, that understanding their practices might help him escape, felt hollow even as he formed it. The substance tasted like metal and electricity, burning down his throat and spreading through his nervous system like liquid fire. For several painful moments, he feared he poisoned himself with alien chemistry incompatible with his lizard-like physiology. Then the walls between minds dissolved. The initial sensation was not unlike drowning, a panicked fight for self-preservation as his consciousness threatened to spread into nothingness. Zorik struggled to maintain the boundaries of self as foreign thoughts and sensations flooded his mind. "Let go," whispered a chorus of voices, Mira's among them, but indistinguishable from the others. Fighting only makes the change more difficult. He couldn't tell if the voices were speaking aloud or directly into his mind. The distinction seemed suddenly unimportant, a quaint limitation of individual existence that now struck him as absurdly primitive. Colors expanded beyond his species' visual range. Smell carried complex information his brain had never evolved to interpret. The background hum that permeated Haven resolved into a complex symphony of communication, the colony's constant exchange of information, emotion, and purpose. Most disorienting was the time shift. His perception expanded beyond the rigid progression of moments to encompass multiple simultaneous experiences. He witnessed the morning's hunt from 8 different perspectives simultaneously. He felt the satisfaction of dozens of colonists as they performed their daily tasks, each action contributing to a greater whole. Behind these immediate sensations lay deeper currents, shared memories stretching back decades, collective knowledge accumulated through countless communion rituals. And beneath it all, something alien and ancient that observed with cold, patient intelligence. "The unhuntable knows us as we know it," the collective whispered. "We consume it, it consumes us. Together we become something greater than either could be alone." As the initial chaos subsided, Zorik experienced consciousness expanded beyond individual limitation. The thoughts, memories and sensations of every colonist flowing through him while his flowed through them. Through this shared awareness, the truth of Haven revealed itself in fragments too numerous to fully process. The colonists were not descendants of crashed prisoners. They were members of a radical human-changing cult called the Evolutionary Vanguard, who had fled Council space decades ago after their genetic modification experiments were deemed illegal. They had selected Edge 9 specifically for its isolation and the presence of the creatures they called the Unhuntable, bioengineered weapons abandoned by a long-extinct civilization. The creature's neural tissues contained compounds that allowed for genetic flexibility and consciousness sharing when properly processed. The adaptation to Edge 9's environment wasn't merely technological but biological. The colonists had been systematically incorporating the creature's genetic material into themselves through controlled consumption and technological enhancement, becoming something neither fully human nor fully beast. Most disturbing was their ultimate goal: evolution beyond individual existence into a collective consciousness with the predatory instinct and adaptive capabilities of the Unhuntable, but guided by human intellect and ambition. The vision ended as abruptly as it began, leaving Zorik gasping on the chamber floor. Around him, the colonists continued their synchronized movements, now connected in ways his individual mind could no longer perceive. "You see now," Mira said, helping him to his feet. Her voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. "We are becoming something new, something better." That night, still reeling from the experience, Zorik made a decision. He would find Pella and escape. While the effects of the communion made him temporarily accepted among the colonists, he navigated deeper into the mountain complex, past areas he'd never been permitted to enter. The lingering neural connection from the ceremony allowed him to avoid security measures, his mind still partially meshed with the colony's awareness. In a laboratory deep within the mountain, he found Pella, or what remained of her. She lay on an examination table, partially dissected but horrifically still alive. Implants throughout her body monitored reactions as her tissues were systematically exposed to various compounds derived from the Unhuntable. "Compatibility testing," said Rex's voice from behind him. "Her physical structure is remarkably adaptive, perhaps even more suitable than human baseline for certain aspects of the transformation." Zorik turned to find Rex standing in the doorway, expression calm despite being confronted with unauthorized access to their most restricted area. "You're experimenting on her," Zorik hissed, anger overriding fear. "We experiment on ourselves daily," Rex replied calmly. "Survival requires adaptation, and adaptation requires understanding all biological possibilities. Your friend is contributing to knowledge that may benefit both our species, but I do apologize that I kept this from you until now." "She never agreed to this, didn't she?" Rex tilted his head. "You experienced the communion. You understand our perspective now. Individuals and their temporary desires mean little compared to what we can achieve together." "You're insane." Zorik backed away. "All of you. Insanity is a label applied by those who fear what they cannot understand." Rex stepped forward. "You have a choice now, Zorik. Join us, or join your friend in advancing our understanding of your species' biology." He fled. The next few hours blurred into a desperate escape attempt. Alarms blared throughout Haven as Zorik fought his way toward the settlement's exterior. His environmental suit, patched repeatedly during his stay, provided minimal protection as he burst into Edge 9's toxic atmosphere. Behind him, chaos erupted within the colony. Not all members pursued. Some seemed to be fighting others. He didn't know what for, but he thanked his luck for it. He ran for the emergency beacon, still active but now broadcasting on all frequencies after many cycles of continuous operation. The journey that had taken many days on their arrival passed in a nightmarish blur of many hours. Twice he encountered unhuntable beasts. Twice they seemed to hesitate, as if confused by the lingering neural compounds in his system. When Council responders finally arrived, Zorik was half dead from exposure and exhaustion. As they loaded him onto the rescue vessel, he glimpsed movement at the edge of the landing zone. Mira stood watching, her form now visibly transformed. Limbs longer than normal human shape, hard-shell growths extending along her spine. She locked eyes with Zorik across the distance, and he felt her voice directly in his mind. "You've brought them to us. Perfect." The rescue vessel lifted off as Zorik lost consciousness. When he awoke in Council medical quarantine, the first thing he noticed was the silence. Not external, but internal. The persistent hum of the colony's shared consciousness had disappeared, leaving him isolated within the boundaries of his own mind. The sensation was simultaneously relieving and lonely, like regaining privacy after years in a crowded room, yet missing the constant companionship. For weeks, Council medical specialists examined him, searching for biological contaminants, neural changes, or psychological conditioning. Their tests found traces of unknown compounds in his nervous system, but nothing that explained his fantastic account of Edge 9's human inhabitants. The hallucinations were likely caused by extended exposure to the planet's toxic atmosphere. The chief medical officer explained, combined with isolation stress and trauma from losing your crewmates. Your mind created an elaborate story to process the experience. Zorik didn't argue. What evidence could he offer? The neural connection had faded, leaving only memories that sounded delusional even to his own ears. Without Pella or biological samples from the colony, his story remained just that, a story. Yet sometimes in the space between waking and sleep, he felt whispers at the edge of his consciousness, distant thoughts, not his own, sensations from bodies he didn't possess. At first, he attributed these to trauma echoes, phantom memories of the communion, until the dreams began. Vivid visions of transformed humans moving through council space, of subtle infiltrations and patient waiting. Dreams where Mira spoke to him across the vast distances between stars, her voice as clear as if she stood beside him. "You are our bridge," she would say. "The connection we needed. Through you, we understand their weakness. Through you, we spread." He reported these dreams at first, but stopped when he noticed the increasing suspicion with which council officials regarded him. Better to appear recovered than potentially compromised. And so it continued for many cycles until the council finally decided to formally question him about the Edge 9 incident. In the council interrogation room, alarms suddenly blared, cutting through Zorik's narrative. The three investigators' communication devices activated simultaneously, projecting urgent messages only they could see. The granite face's stone-like expression cracked with the first emotion Zorik had observed: fear. "Seal this facility," he ordered, rising abruptly. "Full protection measures." The clear skin's translucent body pulsed rapidly with agitation. Reports confirmed from multiple stations. The third investigator replied, already moving toward the door. Simultaneous attacks. Unknown attackers with. They rushed from the room, leaving Zorik alone. The isolation felt strange after weeks of constant watching. Slowly, deliberately, he raised a clawed hand to his neck. Beneath the scales, something pulsed, something that didn't belong to his lizard-like body. A slight smile played across his features as he felt the first whispers of distant minds touching his consciousness. The communion was spreading, evolving beyond the colonists' expectations. Mira had been right. They needed the galaxy to find them eventually. After all, every predator eventually outgrows its hunting ground. At Council's Central Command, the highest-ranking officers gathered around displays showing footage from the attacked outposts. The images showed transformed humans moving with unnatural coordination, limbs too fluid, bodies shifting slightly as if not fully solid, injuries healing almost instantly. "What are we looking at?" demanded Chief Director Saren, her cybernetic eye zooming to analyze details. The science officer cleared his throat nervously. "Director, a beginning analysis of the attacker's biological material shows something concerning. The human genetic patterns are mixed with something else, something that appears to be actively rewriting the host DNA in real time. An engineered disease." "No." The science officer's voice dropped. It's behaving more like a distributed intelligence using biology as its hardware. And it's not just in their bodies. We're detecting trace elements in the air systems, water processing, even on surfaces they've touched. In the science lab several floors below, a researcher examined a tissue sample from one of the attackers under the microscope. The cells pulsed and changed, reorganizing themselves into new structures. The researcher leaned closer, fascinated by the impossible biology, never noticing the microscopic particles rising from the sample, entering his lungs with each breath. Throughout the facility, subtle changes progressed unnoticed. Security officers whose movements synchronized just a fraction too perfectly, technicians whose eyes reflected light just a bit too brightly, administrative staff whose productivity suddenly increased as they began working with a unified purpose. Across dozens of worlds, the same pattern repeated. The hunt had spread beyond Edge 9, beyond physical boundaries, beyond the limitations of individual bodies. The Council had always prided itself on its ability to classify, categorize, and understand new species. But how do you fight an enemy that isn't just in front of you, but inside you? How do you resist when resistance itself becomes part of their adaptation? The unhuntable had evolved, gaining human intelligence and ambition while retaining its essential nature to consume, adapt, and spread. The feast had begun, and the galaxy was on the menu.